Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jen, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges, and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is Jenn Melyan from A Fat Perspective. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen. This is going to be fun.
This is going to definitely be very fun. Okay, so Jenn is also a fellow Taipei American School alum whom I had the pleasure to reconnect with this year. I personally admire the work Jenn is doing and creating space for more awareness and education on body positivity, both for the individual but also culturally. I'm excited to dive into this conversation with Jenn today as we cover the topic of how gaining weight really impacted her and the work she does today. From being dumped by her boyfriend to being verbally abused by her own mother about her weight, having no self-confidence, and tools to learn how to love herself in a fat, healthy body. So, Jenn, I'm going to stop here and have you start by introducing yourself to our audience and tell us about that turning point for you when all this really weighed you down and started this journey for you. And on a side note, I would also like to congratulate you on your Huffington Post publications and your latest modeling gig, which we can all go into as well. So
thank you. So I'm Jen, and like Jen said, I've been working a lot in the space of, I call it body liberation, and that's something I didn't tell you. I call it body there's a lot of people call it body liberation because it's where we are looking to seek for the equality of all bodies and to liberate ourselves from the things that we've been taught. So for me personally, like I grew up in Taiwan. And for those of you who don't know, growing up in Taiwan as a non-skinny person is like the worst thing ever. Like people comment and it's just like growing. So I grew up with like, I hate myself because I'm chubby. I was chubby my entire life. And then in high school, like in middle school, I basically starved myself. So then I didn't eat, and then I finally looked like everybody else, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I had friends, I had confidence, and like maybe boy attention, but like not really, because I don't even know. Well, let's not get into that. I don't know. But so then I was like, oh, things are going well. And then my mother, who used to nag me and like fight with me all the time, all of a sudden became pleasant. So then I grew the association that like if I was skinny, then my life was fine. And then people would be okay with me. Mm-hmm. And then I went to college and then like, where I gained a lot of weight. So then like, I fought with my mom nonstop. And that was actually the beginning of like my learned, like really like self-hatred. And like, cause like up to that point, I've always been kind of like chubby, but if you looked at the pictures, you'd be like, what? This person isn't even fat. You know how like people say like, I wish I could go back to that time where I thought I was fat, but then I really am not. Like that was that time, you know, like where I'm like, when I look at it now, I'm like, what are people's problem? It's just like a little girl, you know? And then when I went to college, I got put on like the freshman 50. So then like there was a significant change in my appearance. And then, so I remember things like, okay, I came back to Taiwan. I wanted to go to a high school event. And my mom said, don't go because people are going to make fun of you. So don't go. So then, okay. And then there's more comments. So that's when I really learned like, oh, I should start hiding myself because like no one wants to see me. And like, so it was just this like 2 years of like trying to get back to like the high school weight because my mom was like, meh. Like really not nice about it. And then like I finally did it. So then things are okay. I started dating again. Like ridiculous. Like I hate all that. But and then she died. And I'm laughing about it because I'm uncomfortable and that's nothing funny about my mom dying. But like she died. So then then in like the wake of her death and like me being unable to process, I once again dealt with my emotions by eating. So then I put on a bunch of weight. And then that's when I was really like, whoa, like I can't come back from this. And then in that, like that kind of yo-yo, I hate myself and I love like it all came to a head. I think and I wrote about it in my Huffington Post article. So it's like a little but where I was in an acting class and then the voice teacher was looking at me like, what are you doing? Because I was sitting there slumped over and like, like then the way I was talking about myself was like very like, oh, I'm not good enough. And I was like so like needy and wanting attention. And then, but just kind of like this. And he was like, enough. Because I was also wearing clothes that were like too small for me because I didn't want to buy bigger clothes because I was like, oh, maybe I'll like magically lose weight later. Like all these things. And he saw that. So he like pulled me to the side after one horrible class where once again, like I was like the example of what not to do. So he looked at me, he was like, what are you doing, Jen? Like, when are you going to start living your life? Are you going to start living your life now? Or are you going to live 30 pounds from now, 50 pounds from now? Like, what is it going to take for you to live your life? I want you to speak up now. Because, so then no one's ever said that to me actually before. So that started my process of thinking, well, then like, what am I doing?
Mm,
How am I living my life?
right. So
So,
at this point
no,
in
that was a long story.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I didn't even in some cases, in some of the other, episodes, which I'm sure those who,
Mhm.
have listened, I go way back. I, like, dig as far back as, like, "So where were you born?" and this and that, and, for those who don't know, Jen is actually, half American, half Taiwanese, right? So you have this bicultural element
Mhm.
as well. But I wanted to ask at this point, how old were you when your mom passed? And this professor who kind of given you the awakening shake.
Yeah.
Like at what year in college was that?
Actually, it was after. So, the timeline wasn't clear. My mom died when I was 21, and I was in the acting class at 25. So
Okay.
it's post college.
And I just wanted to bring us back again to because it sounds like based on what you were illustrating earlier that a lot of this noise and a lot of this like self-doubt and
Mhm.
self-hatred, it just sounds like it was really just coming it's like really coming from your mom, right? Like and your surroundings. Because
Well, yeah, I wouldn't put it all on my mother. That's not fair because she was also a product of her environment, and I'm a
right.
product of our environment.
Yes.
Like literally, I was trained by Taiwanese people to hate myself,
Mm.
and I was in America as well. I mean, like if you turn on the TV, like you know what I mean. Like, well, what do we see? Skinny people, yay! And like, okay, I know it's all but off topic. Did you know the '90s heroin chic is coming back?
No.
It's coming back. They are trying to bring it back. So like, yeah. So anyway, it's a big problem in like in the space that I'm in. Like we're very, like a lot of people who are like fat liberators were very concerned about this trend swinging back to that because you know what that did to a whole generation of people who grew up in the '90s,
Mm.
like us, have very unhealthy relationships with what we think a grown human body should look like. So anyway,
So
yeah,
I mean, can I
yeah,
ask
I know.
you to can I just ask you to uh briefly give the Cliff Note version for those who are not familiar with this?
Of the heroin chic stuff.
Yeah.
So in the '90s, because thanks to Calvin Klein, there was a whole like what aesthetic of being really skinny and looking like you're on heroin. And I mean, and that's what they called it, heroin chic. So it's like these tiny, and it's like the Calvin Klein models are so skinny, what is it? Their hip bones are poking out, and like that was the aesthetic of the time, and that was what the what is it? All the magazines were saying this is like the way you should look. This is great. And then it comes out later. The models who went through that, a lot of them said like actually it was really unhealthy for me. I was like I had an eating disorder. I wasn't eating. So currently, because the pendulum is swinging, you know how we had the bicycle shorts a couple years ago, and then now like the industry's like, oh, they're like releasing things like we just had like the another fashion week, and then it was less body inclusive in terms of size this year than like the previous year. So it's kind of like they're and then like the things that we're seeing them design, we're like, oh no, it's coming back.
Wow.
So
So
so yeah,
the body positivity and inclusivity for models to come out and be able to, like, the plus, when they said plus size
yeah.
models, et cetera, is that, so you're saying it's going the other direction now?
Um, it it is and it isn't. Like
Mm.
I think I was talking high fashion. They're swinging. They're trying to like bring it back to the heroin chic. And yes, inclusivity, because well, it's whatever makes that's like the bottom line is whatever makes money, right?
Yeah.
So like if inclusivity makes the money, why wouldn't they do it?
Right.
So as long as inclusivity has a dollar sign, I think they'll be okay with it. And I
Yeah.
think consumers want inclusivity. So it's kind of here to stay, but like not really,
Yeah.
because they're still trying to do things to make it to to other different bodies. Like for example, did you know when they shoot, they have certain, not all companies, but some companies, they deliberately shoot like for plus sizes. I call it plus sizes. For bigger sizes, they would take a thin model and pad her out so that the face is thin and then it looks better for clothing. And I'm using better because it's like so they do that. And then like, and I've spoken to photographers who are like, oh my gosh, they like, clothing companies have such a hard time shooting like bigger sizes that they don't always like hire the right model. Like it's crazy. So
Mm. Okay,
yeah, I
coming
know I
back.
went off track. I'm so sorry. I went off
No, no,
track.
you educated us a little bit. I feel like I have a better understanding, because again, this topic is, it's sensitive, right? And it's like, what's the right words to use to talk about it, how to not be offensive, which we'll go into later when we talk more
Yeah.
about that perspective. However, I do want to go back to, obviously you addressed your challenge growing up in that environment and having those words and comments said to you. And it sounds like the very impactful moment was when this professor pulled you aside and really shook you out and
Mhm.
said, okay, come on, wake up. So then I,
Yeah.
I want to continue with that and ask, how did you wake up?
It took a time. That was the beginning. So that was like the like someone cracking the egg open and you're like, oh, okay. But then I'm still like, I want skinny privilege. Like I want like all the things that the other girls had. Like why would I want to be okay with this? Like this is like I'm getting, like discriminated against, made fun of, can't buy clothes. But so it took lots of time with in therapy, and also like having certain exercises. Like I think a key thing was me coming to terms with bodies, period. So like I would study bodies and mine as well. Like I would look at the parts of my bodies I don't like my big fat belly, and I'm like, what's ugly about it? Why do I hate it? And I would study it. And then in looking at it, I'm like, oh, look at it's a body, you know? And I would look at different things, like some, like the things that we would call ugly. And I don't even like using it. Like I'm just using it because it's easy to understand. But like I would, like a dimpled butt, like, my stretch marks, like all these things. And I was like, oh, let me study them. And then I started to see like the art and creation of our bodies. And I was like, each body is like a complete miraculous machine. So there's nothing inherently ugly or horrible about it. So that started to shift the way I view bodies. Now, doesn't mean I'm like free from the conditioning and the machinery that I'm in. It's just like I'm just a lot more aware of where that comes from
Yeah.
or my reactions to it. So then it's like when we react, then I'm like, okay, I can choose. Do I want to like indulge in the stuff I've been taught, or be like, well, what's reality? So
And did you at this point find a community of individuals who, also could relate to you? So you saw a therapist, you had friends around you, but
yeah.
were you able to seek out support groups too, or like other individuals who could relate to
I
this storyline? Or do you feel like at the time there wasn't such a community for people to seek out, right? To be okay in their own skin.
Yeah, I think less so because
Mm,
it was like 10 years ago
mhm,
when I started. But also the other thing is like it takes something to say I want to be part of that community. It takes something for somebody to be like, this is my identity
mm,
and I'm going to be with others, because there's always that inherent like we value, like I think the fat liberation movement, shoot, I forget the acronym, but there are organizations and they've been around since the 70s and they have great resources, but it's not something we would know to reach out to, or what, when we're dealing with our own self internalized shame and fat phobia. So there is this kind of a thing where you have to get to a certain point where you're okay with wearing that hat
mhm,
before you're able to reach out for community. I
mhm.
don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course. But for you, like, did you eventually do that? Like, did you eventually reach out to a community, or you just kind
No.
of no?
Now I am.
Well, now
I
you're
do.
creating your own,
Yeah.
but but and may I extend the conversation by asking why at the time you didn't? I mean, and you did say earlier it's like you need to be more comfortable with yourself and fat phobia before you do seek that out, right? It's kind I guess my question is I guess
It never occurred to me to reach out to that, like, at that
mm,
time.
mhm,
Um, I think the closest I got was one of the actually it's really cool. One of the OG like fat activists. Her name is Virgie Tovar. She writes great stuff. Like somebody who knew her, who was a coach, put together a book club. So I was really excited to join this because she was going to have all these like fat activist authors lead book discussions, and then it fizzled out. So like
mhm.
kind of, but like never fully like yeah, you know. So
Uh, so I want to also ask in terms of usage of words, right? Because
okay.
again, this is like, and because it's sensitive, right? So it's like you say body positivity, you say fat phobia, you say fat. Do we use the word fat here? Because I remember
Well,
when you
yeah.
and I first reconnected, and I asked you, I said, okay, we say fat, but in a health checkup, your vitals and everything are healthy, right? Like it's right. It's not like so. Where do we draw the line between saying like and this person's fat versus skinny, and
It's a great question. I think the number one thing to do is to not make fat a bad word.
right.
Number one, like it's a description, period. But we've done such terrible things to that word. Now it's something like it's shame, it's an insult. Like you call someone a fat bastard, you don't call them a skinny bastard, you call them a fat bastard. Like it's a terrible word. So I think it's like number one, unshame the word. Like make it a normal word. Like it's nothing, it's just a description. And then like because like how are you going to describe, and I actually hate all the euphemisms. Oh, she's curvy. Like f all the way off, I'm fat, okay, like god, like and then like the different degrees of fat, like I don't know, like there's no standardized like, well, this is chubby, that's fat, and this is obese, like I don't know. And then the medical has their own thing, and then that we can, I don't want to get even, just so you know, that whole like health thing with the BMI is total garbage in a certain point of view. Now, I'm not saying that. Anyway, this is something really interesting about like fat and healthy, because you brought that up as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that stuff drives me crazy because like we've people who are trying to insult or educate or help out, like people like me who are overweight, always pull the health card. Now, I want to make it crystal freaking clear. I am not saying that fat is healthy or unhealthy. I am not saying that. That is not my platform. I don't give two hoots about that. The point is how we treat people with dignity or shame.
Mm.
And everyone, we've like the whole society, they've now like you can't call people ugly, right? You can't do that. So that now they're all holding onto the health card. Like literally, if you go onto the Huffington Post comment section and you scroll down, all the insults are about how I'm gonna die before 40. Well, joke's on y'all. I'm like 38, so I'm gonna make it to 40. So like that's the insult. Like that's where people are like, oh well, that's all great, but like you're unhealthy. And so there's this whole new term called healthism that I've run into as I've done done the research and like reading more about the world of like how we help people with body liberation. It's like policing people's health decisions and making it a moral obligation for someone to be healthy is called healthism. And that is not something that that's a problem. Like we don't have to it's not our business if someone is healthy or not. Yeah, and okay, here's the official definition. It's the idea that a person's health is entirely their responsibility. And it places moral importance on maintaining good health.
I like that.
Like you should be healthy, right? Like so there's that, and then there's there's that. Like who are we to say, hey, you have to be healthy? And then there's always like, well, there's societal consequences because fat people are costing the medical system so much money. Like, are we though? Like, where are you getting that? And then and then number two, if you really want to help, like, love the shit out of people. Jesus Christ, is it so hard? Like, anyway, like, so I get really upset over that because it's like the last thing people can hold on to. And the other thing, skinny doesn't mean healthy, nor does skinny mean unhealthy. Like everyone's body is different. Like for some people, a bigger frame works for them. For some people, a smaller frame works for them.
Yeah.
And then and I will say for my own self, when I was 350 pounds, I was unhealthy for me. But that was me. And then there's certain parts of me that were fine. There's certain parts of me that are not okay. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's my business.
Yeah.
Not yours. So yeah.
Okay, so we got really good framework there, but I want to go back to you. So can you tell us about that process you went through, which you did mention earlier? You did a lot of therapy work, and in this decade time, since that professor, do you still keep in touch with this professor? Since that professor,
he's a teacher. He's not a professor.
I'm sorry, this teacher.
He's a teacher. And he's still a working actor. Yeah, I still keep. I emailed him the article after it came out. I was like,
that's amazing.
I was like, you don't realize what an impact you had on my life.
Oh, that's great. So, that period, in terms of how you navigated society, you went, you finished school. Did you then pursue acting? Was this identity of yours, did it hover over you when you were navigating the workforce environment? And then you did mention in our intro, we talked about relationships, so if you could kind of take us a little bit on this process of how, what it was like going through all that, and then how you slowly were able to peel those layers of onions to really find your core, right? And stand very grounded to where you are today.
Well, because I forgot about the fat phobic because you mentioned him, but God, what a terrible guy. This was actually right after my mom died, before anyway, as my life was falling apart, I put on weight, and he literally said to me, oh gosh, when we first started dating, you were hot, but now you're ugh, you're gross, ew. Like, I'll only date you if you lose weight. And I was in such like self-loathing at that time because I was just like so desperate for like any sort of support and attention because I lost my mom. So then I was like, okay, sure, I will lose weight, and didn't do it. So there was okay, but that didn't answer your question. I was just giving context.
Context
How
is
did
context is important.
so how did I navigate all that stuff? It really there's no it's like all things, right? You ask people, how did you build a machine? It takes time and tinkering, and the willingness to go back to the work. And I think, and really importantly, finding a mentor or, like you said earlier, a community that supports you. I did not have a community, but I had a mentor, who my therapist mentor, like the love of my life, who loved the shit out of me and really like showed me things I never thought was possible. Like I remember walking into her office and she had these pictures of these big women on the wall, and I'm like the first time like what, and then realizing like, oh, that's beautiful, or that's like it's something to be celebrated. It's just the body, like, and then just having that like relationship to like to kind of slow down and think of what's behind all this, which is like at the end of everything, it's our relationship with ourselves. So to have someone just slowly, does that even answer your question? Like it's just a slow tinkering, and it's like when I feel it's just tinkering and tinkering and tinkering, and having a willingness to like know like, okay, this is where I'd like to be in a relationship with myself and my body where I'm fully free and in love, and then like working continuously to get that, and then not stopping until it's there. I don't know. I'm probably not stopping until the day I die, probably.
No, I completely agree, and I think, it's in any situation. It's that practice and practice and practice and practice, and it's instilling those habits and change in mindset, and really
Yeah.
believing in yourself, right? In any of those kind of scenarios, what wherever you're at, in at that point. But I was wondering for you, like, especially now,
Yeah.
whenever you come across things and comments, just like you said in the Huffington Post when you're reading the comments, and you go through those things, how because you are stronger now than you were 15 years ago, right?
Mhm.
In where you are now, and your love for yourself. When you do read those comments, or when you do hear things people say to you, or side comments about like, oh, she's big, or whatever those comments could be, how do you react, and how do you know to stay um grounded in those situations now?
It's great question because listen, no one's perfect, right? Like,
Exactly.
and it really, I think our environment and our support are really important. Because when I was in Taiwan, like after 6 months, I was like, I started to feel the effects of fat phobia come barreling back at me. Like I get angry at people. I'm like, like here I'd be more like, okay, like just like I think how we structure our support system is really important. Like I have people here who will say things to me like, hey Jen, remember we don't talk about bodies. I'm like, this is true. Like we like there's a community that like where like my day-to-day interaction, like the 90% of the time with the people I spend time with don't reinforce those things. So I think that's important. Like who we structure most of our time to be around and who we choose, and then how we unfortunately need to educate our community. Like so it took time. Like my community and I can like our friends and whatever, we educated each other. Like we've talked about like what's fat phobia, what's not, like what makes me uncomfortable, and then they've seen it. So then they start to become like my allies when we go out into like the real world. So there's like that's a piece of it. Um And then, like you said, how to handle comments like that. I mean, like, um, of course, I get riled up sometimes. I'm like, and then also, then the other thing is to look at it and go, yeah, this proves my point. Like their comments prove my point. Like, um, and the other thing is like, I think when we are, when we choose to put ourselves out there, we have to know where we stand. And I think that, like, sometimes, like, not by choice, if you have a body that stands out, like, you're out there. So it's like, how can we build our foundation of self-love and respect before we get it, hammered by people who don't, I don't know, who don't, get it. Did I answer your question? I feel like I went on a tangent again.
No, you did.
Okay.
Which then is, I mean, it's great that you are allowing me to transition into asking about what got you to create a fat perspective, and why is that so significant and important for you, as well as how did you get into modeling, and how you hope that can again bring more awareness and education for more, right, to kind of shift that.
Yeah, so a fat perspective was created because I really think the things that, like, people in fat bodies, or I mean, not even fat bodies. I mean, eventually it's going to be beyond just like fatness, but like, um these things people don't talk about. People don't talk about, like, weight neutrality or what it's like, and not everyone unless you're heavily involved, you don't know that, like, how um inherently fat phobic our medical system is.
Hmm.
Like, and the kind of discrimination people face when they go into the doctor, and then, like, what it's like, and it's just been really interesting finding these people. It's like a fat perspective is almost like calling in, like, members of the community to share about their experiences. And I think the most important thing, that why I wanted to do it in the first place, was because, like, I firmly believe the only way we can ever shift people's perspective on anything is by sharing our stories. So once we are able to share and listen, like, there's no room for hate. So that's why I really created that spot, because I'm like, it's time we listen to each other, and that's how we're gonna change everything. So
Ah, I love that. Um, where do you hope to see a fat perspective be
there.
in like 5 to 10 years?
5 to 10 years. Well, like, I should have a better measure of, like, what a successful podcast numbers look like. That is what I would like for it. Of whatever the magic number of subscribers are. But beyond that, I think um what I really would like it to serve is like a digital community,
Mm,
like a safe space for people who are in a diverse body to go and, like, okay, here's where I find my community, here's where I can get resources, and here's where I can share and listen to different stories. Like, really, it's about sharing and listening to stories. Like, I really want to do, like, a Humans of New York type of thing for, like, diverse bodies.
yeah,
Like, that's really, it's let's just go listen. It's like, yeah, that's where I'd like it to be.
awesome. I'm very excited for you.
And you also asked about modeling,
Yes, I
which
did.
I think, okay, so it started off as a joke. Cause, cause like, cause someone was like, "You should be a model." I'm like, "Okay, I will." And it was that simple declaration. And I think what's kind of amazing is, like, when we declare things and we see the possibility of that for ourselves, and it changes how we see ourselves. And then it just kind of, like, it can open up things, like, that we didn't think were possible for ourselves to achieve. But I think, so that was like the beginning. Like, someone in a course that I was in said, "Hey, you should model." I'm like, "Okay." But really how it started was my photographer friend and I. like we traded. Like she took pictures of me and then like I practiced. And that was crucial for me because she was a body neutral or like a fat ally or a body ally. She was like the perfect person. So for all people who are like, I'm interested in it, yeah, you want to be careful who you pick for your first couple photo shoots because that's when you're like imposter syndrome's raging and all this stuff, and you want to be able to have cheerleaders and people who are gonna be able to say the things that you'll start hearing in your heads. Because like my first 5 photo shoots were with her, and the photos were freaking fantastic. And all I heard was, "You're awesome, you're amazing, you're great." And I had evidence to back it up because then I saw the photos. I'm like, yeah. So it's like how you start. So then now I'm like, no, I'm good, I'm awesome, I'm great. Like, like, so it's like where you start and whose voice you let into your head really matters. Now there's the whole like learning how to do it, which is a whole other conversation, which I
Yeah.
don't yeah. But
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing. But like that part I think is important. So
Nice. Those, I mean, I've seen a few of your photos and they are amazing, beautiful, and full of confidence. And, these are affirmation words that you should take with you, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I sometimes struggle with actually with modeling is like, here's the thing. I have pretty privilege. I really do. Like, I'm pretty. Like in terms of like looking at it from like a what is it? Like a traditional viewpoint, right? I have big eyes, I have a nose, like, like the features are balanced. So like in that sense, like I have an unfair advantage. And it's sometimes like I'm mulling over that because like that's part of the complaint people have with like the body positivity movement. It's like all about beauty. Like you're beautiful, blah 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 blah. And like I could honestly give 2 shits if you're beautiful. Like but like that's like so I think about that. I
yeah.
don't know, like, I think about like how like I have an advantage because of that in a fat body.
Mm,
And I also have the advantage of having like big boobs.
mm,
So then that helps with the proportion. So it's like
mm.
it's all like it's good to know like where our privileges are
Yeah.
and like to know that how that even in like the space it gives you
I suddenly had this idea for you as we were talking about this, and I'm just gonna spit it out while we're talking
okay.
and recording and, the audience is listening to this. I almost kind of think that a fat perspective should also offer this kind of photo shoot, like, how do you find beauty through the lens? I mean, okay, we don't have to use the word beauty. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So again, it's like I feel like this whole conversation we're having today, we're tiptoeing around words here, because every word or wording we use, there's like two perspectives to it. But to my
Yeah.
point, it's just like how to get behind like be in front of the camera and find your most confident self with the right photographer who can
Yeah.
help you with that, right? So I just a little idea for you. I think that would be very fun to execute.
Yeah. It
So
would be.
yeah, I know. I'm thinking it would be so fun. Um, and who knows what you can turn that into down the line. But so we're coming short on time, and I do have a few. I always say a few last questions, but sometimes they turn into more than one, which it is more than one. So I will list them out for you, and you can answer it in whatever order you would like.
Okay.
One is what keeps you grounded personally. Two is what books or podcasts has helped, or even it could even be a person. So you mentioned your mentor therapist that has helped you along in this process that you've gone through that you would recommend to other people. Like if someone else came up to you and was like, Jen, I am experiencing all this and it's really hard. Like, and then you'd be like, oh, here are some resources that's really helped me, like, see if these
Mhm.
resonate with you. And then the third one is what would you tell your younger self, what you know now, as like a kind
Okay.
of like a message to your younger self. Yeah. Or that one could also be, what would you tell the audience that's listening to this specific episode that can really resonate with your storyline? What would you say to them?
Okay, so the first question was, how do I stay grounded?
Yep.
Oh man. Um I think it's a daily practice. It's choosing and I'm very lucky in that life continues to teach me lessons. Always offers me things to remind myself like, "Hey, have you like things happen and it's like where are you protecting your sovereignty? How are you taking care of you?" So like I'm very lucky in that the like life gives me a lot of opportunities to think about that. So then it's like how do I go back to that? So for me, um what I would say is everyone's way of finding grounding is different. And it is important to experiment with different ways to find your unique way. Now, for me, a few things. I go out to nature, I hug a tree, instantly, I'm good. I put on essential oils, like I know different ones, like what works for what. That helps. Dance helps me, and taking breaths helps me, and stretching helps me. But that's my formula, and there's like a bajillion different ways. So that's one. And the second question you asked me was
Resource.
resources.
Mhm.
So I um like off the top of my head, I could say if you're interested in the gosh, online there's a lady called a militant baker. She's put together like a huge list of resources, people who are interested in like body liberation stuff, like mostly fat stuff. But I'm just saying like body size, like that's one. She's put together a list. Anything by Virgie Tovar is very yay yay yeah, good for fat liberation. And then Roxane Gay wrote a book called Hunger. It is beautiful. It's like about her journey. I mean, and all these are basically telling stories about what it's like being in a fat body. But these are great places to start. And then message to my younger self and a message to everybody. I think it's like you're really worth all the love, care, and attention you deserve. Like you're really worth it. This no matter how whatever circumstance you're in, you're worth it. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be cared for.
Can I ask that particular statement you just said? At what point did you realize that?
Uh, well, I don't. I think my therapist has been talking to me about that since like day one, but it's an ongoing thing. Like I constantly remind myself of that, and I constantly am reminded of that. Like, and earlier pre-recording, I was whining to you about guys and stuff like that, and it's again, how do I stay grounded? It's like, well, it's so easy to get dragged into like, oh, I'm not worth it because they don't know. Like we look at ourselves and we're like, what are like we are all deserving beings. And I think the biggest thing is like realizing in my like late early 30s where like people were starting getting married left and right and I was by like single, that like the most precious love that we can get is from us to us. Because I was having a lot of trouble like wanting it from outside sources. And then it was like realizing that actually the most complete love is from yourself to you. So yeah.
100%.
So anyway.
That I think was a great way to conclude our conversation.
Am I rambling?
Oh,
So
no, not at all. I will put all the resources, including the books, A Fat Perspective, your podcast, the website, your social media, on the links below, and people can follow or reach out to you. And yeah, thank you so
thank
much.
you.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.